our show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Large Glass. My name is Todd.
I'm Terri.
And this is our weekly show where we bring you a new artist live to talk to. How's everybody doing? Oh, here come everybody saying hello.
All the regulars.
All the regulars are here. Let's see, we got John and Jess Park. Jess,
hello.
Jess, I'm so happy you got your hat. I'm so happy.
Yay.
Ben is here. Joseph Barbacci is here with the now regular TNT. 63.
63. Hello.
Good to see you, 63. Hi, Mom. Good. We got a nice crowd so far. This is good. Pumpkin Audrey's here, and Sherry is here.
Hey.
What's going on?
That's great.
You know, we're featuring the Brownstone tonight, where Sherry recently had a show.
Yes, we are.
And and Sherry's saying hi to Tony. Now Tony can hear us, but and there's Taylor Backus.
Hey, Taylor.
Hi, Taylor. Good. So we've got a nice turnout so far. This is awesome. Mm-hmm. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
Is it hot?
It's a little warm.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Which means I've already started.
Yes.
I'm into the bottle already. I started opening this all enthusiastically, and I'm like, wait, I have to start the show first.
Yes.
So.
Well, that's okay.
Let's see. Judy Starbuck Sorrow says hi, Tony. Tony's in the green room, and he can hear.
Yes.
So he's probably hearing all of this right now. Let's do a little pour. What episode are we on?
Oh, gosh. 92?
Yeah.
We're on 92.
92.
We're cornering around 100. Is that a term? Did I say that?
We're rounding the corner.
We're rounding the corner to 100. We're still thinking about what to do for our 100th episode. So if you got any ideas,
yeah, we keep saying that.
Share them.
But and you know what? And we're rounding that final turn. Not a final turn, because that makes it sound like we're coming to the finish line.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're now about to come into some new things, which I'm excited about.
Yes, so, I am too, very much so.
We've been talking about some additional content that we're going to be adding to the YouTube channel soon, which is exciting. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing some more artist shorts. We're going to be doing some work around art criticism. Right? Shows and things like that?
Yes.
See, I'm saying it during this show because that cements it.
It does.
Sort of.
It holds us accountable.
Yeah, which we need.
So now that we've put it out there, we have to follow through.
Oh, on YouTube, Raven Brown. Hi, Tony. It's
Ooh.
Aunt T. Hi, Aunt T. And let's see. 63 says, going for the centennial. And Tony's mom. Yeah, David Backus says Tony's mom. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of like reading all of these very slowly.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we toast everybody?
Yes, let's toast.
We got a great show lined up tonight. We're really excited to talk to Tony Starbuck.
Indeed.
Cheers to all of you.
Cheers.
Let us know what you're drinking in the chat tonight.
Yes.
Hopefully it's something refreshing. We're having a Montepulciano, which is always a favorite. Oh, that's nice.
It is nice.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good flavor. Let's see, what's going on this week? The Mona Lisa got pegged with a cake.
Sure did.
And I found that to be, I was really interested in this story. So, for those of you who don't know the story, a young man dressed as an old woman in a wheelchair with lipstick made his way into the Louvre and into the room where the Mona Lisa was, and was parked in front of it when he leapt from his chair and slammed a cake into the Mona Lisa. And then after he jumped out of the chair, he kind of revealed himself as a young man and starts to take off before being tackled by the guards. And as he's being escorted out, he was French. He begins in French to sort of yell at the crowd something about, he did it for the environment. He did it for the planet. He said, we're destroying it and that we should pay attention. And I'm like, wow, what a gutsy move. What a stupid, gutsy move. Right? I mean, it's like...
that'll get you to pay attention.
I want to make a statement about the environment, so I'm going to hit the Mona Lisa with a cake.
One of the most famous pieces of art in the world.
You use your resources. Maybe that's all he had. He wanted people to hear him say something about we're killing the planet. So that was his way of getting the attention. I mean, yeah, I know. It's the Mona Lisa, and I don't know how many millions of people go to see it every year, and make a lot of money for the Louvre. And...
Well, oddly, before this all happened, we had gone away for the weekend with a friend, and we were watching a TikTok, and the TikTok was about a Mona Lisa, and our one friend turned to us, and she's like, "Do you think the Mona Lisa is a beautiful painting?" And we all paused.
Well,
and then she got hit in the face with a cake.
The Mona Lisa is definitely a beautiful painting.
It's a beautiful painting.
But I think there are better Da Vinci's, and I think
sure.
that there are paintings I would rather see.
I'm curious why that one has prominence.
If you've seen the Mona Lisa live and in person, if you've managed to get through the gargantuan crowd and seen over the 45 phones that are shoved up in the air so they could have their social media moment, what do you think? Are there paintings you'd rather see? Is that the pinnacle of all that is painting for you?
The pinnacle of beauty? 63 says
define beautiful. Yep. Okay, we're getting the conversation going here.
Yeah.
David Backus says he's having a Gavi with a popcorn chaser.
Ooh.
I'd like a popcorn chaser.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, Joseph Barbacci says, how about a best of show? Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good idea.
That would be a good idea.
We did a call-in show a while back where people were able to call in.
For the new year.
And chat.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Hagenbush says her skin is so lifelike. I think he means many textures. There are so many better artworks in the Louvre. Yeah, agreed. We couldn't believe. Jamie Foster says we couldn't believe how. Hi, Jamie. Couldn't believe how small it was. Yeah, well, I think that's another one that I find that when you see for the first time is if you see a Salvador Dali painting and you come to find out that it's like it's small.
Wow.
They're small.
Huh. I thought the same thing with the Vermeer.
Mm-hmm.
The red hat one, the woman in the red hat, that one's also a very small painting, but when you see it reproduced, you get the impression that it's large. So sometimes that's quite a surprise when you go to see it.
And this becomes a good topic, I think, for a really interesting conversation, is this idea of the reproduction versus in real life, and what our expectations are when we've seen the Mona Lisa 1,000 times in books, but then we finally see it in real life. Is such a funny thing to say.
Yeah.
Because it basically
in person.
In person,
yes.
But then that completely discounts everything else that we've seen before.
Right.
The reproductions that we've seen before, and there's tons of philosophy written about this sort of thing. I'm not breaking any new ground here, or I'm not pretending to, but it's an interesting conversation to have. 63 says persistence of memory is tiny. And all the times I saw that in my textbooks, I thought that must be such a large painting, but it's not.
Must be the legacy.
Yeah, Judy Starbuck Soro says the Mona Lisa is covered in glass, which is what saved it from the cake. Now, apparently there were 5 other attempted vandalisms or thefts in the history of it being at the Louvre. Always, walking away unscathed, basically, except for once in 1919, there was an Italian man who managed to get the Mona Lisa out of the Louvre successfully. But then he got caught when he tried to sell it. So...
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here, you want to buy this painting?
Yeah. I've seen this
Quick,
before.
while nobody's looking.
What a great reproduction.
Guys, you could support us. The Large Glass is something that we are very passionate about, and bringing you these artist interviews is something that we are not only passionate about, but we often and occasionally argue about, and we work very hard at producing. And so it's something that we feel needs to go on. We feel that we need to sort of grow and push our content a little bit and get better at what we do, and you can support that. So ways that you could support that. Well, number one, you could head over to thelargeglass.org and slam on that donate button and look at all the different ways you could buy us a cup of coffee or support us in a larger way. There are other ways that you can support us as well.
You can buy a T-shirt.
Yeah, but
wear a cool logo.
But as Jess Park will tell you,
She had a rough time.
She had a rough time with that order. And that was our dropship merchandise producer kind of flubbed that one on us.
Yes.
But more importantly, you can follow us. If you're here and you're new and you've never seen the show before and you're over there on YouTube or you're over there on Twitch or even Facebook, you can follow us. So on Facebook, it's a like. On YouTube, it's subscribe, and you can even hit the notification bell if you want. And on Twitch, it is basically a follow as well. You can subscribe on Twitch. That does cost money. We do like that, but that's up to you. Twitch is ultimately free if you'd like it to be. So please, 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 if you can, follow us, tell a friend, and we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, Jess Park says, no worries, it was worth the wait. And there's Glenn Lavertu popping in.
Hello.
Let's see. I'm going to get this name wrong because it's a lot of letters, and I have my glasses on, but it's De Felice Student Work.
De Felice Student Work.
Says Hito Sterile wrote an essay called In Defense of the Poor Image. It discusses a lot on this subject. Such a great read. Thank you for that.
Yes.
I'm going to go back and write that down after the show is over. I want to look into that. And saying hello. Oh, good. I pronounced it correctly. Excellent. Excellent. Well, give us a follow if you want. You can come see more of this content.
Yeah, come see more.
But thanks for joining us tonight either way.
Yes.
Okay, should we...
Oh, I found it. It's on medium.com.
You're already ordering it. This is what she does. You know.
Yeah, you say something, I'm on it. So,
So, I'm curious if we should maybe get started introducing Tony.
That might be a good idea. So there's a lot, there's a lot going on at this time of year. Like there's a lot of organizations around us that have things happening like Art Yard and Whittemore. So go check those out. I'm just going to kind of give a nice broad general plug.
No, that's good.
There's a festival coming up at the end of the month. They're having an open studio where people can come in and create costumes, and we all gather together and hatch from an enormous egg. That's at the end of June.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah,
so that's at
that.
artyard.org. But we're going to start talking about tonight's artists. There is an exhibition up at one of our favorite galleries, the Brownstone Art in Brooklyn. The exhibition is entitled Intersections, and it's up until June 11th with a closing reception on June 12th. The artist that's joining us tonight is named Tony Starbuck, and although he was born in Rome, he spent the past several decades here in the United States. He was on the West Coast for a little while, and now he's been in Brooklyn for several decades. He works in sound, and he's also creating his art. He's got a fantastic exhibit that you should all check out. He'll be joining us in a few moments. For everybody watching us tonight, please give a warm welcome to Tony Starbuck.
Hey, Tony. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks, Todd and Terri, for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. We're really honored to have you, and I'm excited to talk about your work. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for the wonderful red wine. I appreciate it.
And cheers.
Cheers.
Great to have you.
It's triple T tonight.
It's T cubed. That's fantastic.
Tony Tone.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We could spell it all three ways.
Like the triple threat. Yeah. All right.
All right. Beautiful observation.
Yes.
So,
just a reminder for everybody out there, if you have any questions for Tony as we start to talk, please feel free to type them in the chat and we'll get right to them. But Tony, what we normally do when an artist joins us on the show, we're very familiar with your work right now because we've been living and breathing it for the past few weeks. But some of the viewers out there aren't as well acquainted with your work. So what we would like for you to do is to describe what it is that you do for the audience.
Oh, yeah, sure. I guess I would call myself a digital collagist. I work purely in the digital domain, and then when I complete a piece, I make prints of it on real paper with real ink. So, there's something plastic there. Everything is photography based. Everything you see, drips of paint, characters, whatever, they're all, layered in, spliced in. So it's a lot of, just exploring the environs. I'm in New York City, and then taking tons of photography and then bringing it all home, and then, going through the editorial process of figuring out what direction I'm going to head in with, my newfound images.
Gotcha. By the way, Tony, I don't know if you heard before, but there's some people here that are very specific to you. Could you hear us talking about them and telling you who?
Well, there's a woman out there named Judy Starbuck who claims to be my mother, and my brothers tell me that she is. So I believe that's my mom. Tracy Brown is my sister-in-law. She's the sister of my wife, Tammy.
Nice.
And what other names do you have floating out there?
De Felice Student Work. I'm not sure if that's directly related to you or if it's a newcomer that came not connected to you, but that's a new one. And that might be it.
Okay. That means none of my brothers are watching, so I'll have to talk to them later.
They might be out there. We don't know. They might just be quiet.
They might be quiet. Shy.
Well, I'm an older brother. I was a little bit tyrannical when they were growing up. So, I understand.
They might be sitting this one out because of that. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the exhibition right now at the Brownstone and kind of just begin to sort of look at some of the work that's there, particularly the perforations pieces. Can we talk about those to start maybe?
Sure, right. The perforation series is my latest body of work. And it's interesting, you have your 100th show coming up, and I have set a target of doing 100 perforations. So maybe the stars will align and I can finish my 100th perforation, and it can coincide with your 100th show. But I've been working for basically, I think, since last fall on this series. And I think I've sort of opened a Pandora's box of exploration and excitement about these pieces for me, because I find new iterations, new, associations, color play, and everything. And you think after 71, pieces involving pretty much the same process. I mean, you're looking at a bunch of spheres. Mm-hmm. But there is just something that is clicking, resonating. I find the process of working in this form to be very meditative, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So that's the most recent body of work. There are also two other bodies of work in this show. I have three what I call my flower pieces, which are, there's one, thank you. And these are sort of a follow-up to some earlier work I did, but it's basically this sort of talismanic creature, organic entity hovering over the landscape. And so what you see in the background are just sort of contrasted, compressed images of Brooklyn. And then the flowers themselves, I spend a lot of time up in Maine, especially in the summer. And most of the flowers in my pieces are from the Thuya Gardens up in Acadia National Park. Mm. And so, living obviously 11 months of the year in New York City, but then getting this month of respite up in Maine. And I know a lot of people during the pandemic have, been leaving the city to go to maybe a calmer place, a place of, at the beginning of safety and whatever else. I really like the merging of these two, the rural and the urban. Mm-hmm. The flowers themselves, to me, when I get done sort of working with them and coloring them and even bending the shape a little bit, sort of become these sort of, in a way, I find them a little bit menacing. I find at the same time that they're absolutely beautiful. And there's always been a divide in America between who lives in urban environments and who lives in the rural environments. And people find menace in both. And so, yeah.
I like that. And you say there's three bodies of work in this show. Let's just quickly touch on the third one, and then we'll kind of dig in a little bit deeper. But tell us about the third one.
The third body of work is, I guess I could just call it figurative work. And this was work that I was doing right before the pandemic. So this was really getting into, all the paint you see in this photograph, for instance, is it's all paint that I've photographed and that I've cut it in. So I don't use a brush, I don't use a pen. I basically just find color and shape, and as you can see, a lot of it is drips. And then I use that in a way that to me is sort of, at the end of the day, to me it is painting. To me it is putting a lot of different organic shapes, found pieces together and just creating, sort of another environment. And the other thing I really like about this, obviously, the pink tag above says Reach. I don't know who Reach is. But then below that, you have this purple and this blue. And what I've really enjoyed lately is that the city, in their never-ending quest to cover up graffiti, has started using these beautiful like blues and purples and tans to go over the graffiti, to the point that if you look behind the figure there, they literally will just basically take the purple paint and draw right over the tag. So you can still see what the tag is, but now it's this beautiful purple field. And so sort of the anti-graffiti program becomes the new, the new graffiti. And at first, I think I was a little bit taken aback by it because, I'm a big fan of graffiti, obviously. But then I'm like, well, this is just another, step, another iteration of graffiti, and I find it just as, important.
It's almost like a new kind of collaborative painting on some level. There's a couple of things coming up in the chat real quick. M Galleries is here. Hi, Frank. Nice to see you. And then Joseph Barbacci is asking, he's saying, we're going to go back to the perforations in a second, but he asked really quickly, is any of your perforation work truly three-dimensional? Of course, I know what slide I'm thinking of in here, we can go back in time a little bit if you want to, but why don't you answer that first?
Well, the thing that has been difficult for a lot of people, I think, to understand looking at the perforations, and I mean, if you go to my website, it's a little bit easier to see the density of the pieces. But they are, I have a friend who says, so what's up with the dots? Meaning, because they're just looking at everything on a screen. Mm-hmm. And so you get no sense of, if you're going to walk in and see the piece printed, the plastic piece, mm-hmm. whether or not it's going to be printed on high gloss paper from CVS, or whether there's going to be something else going on. And what is pretty amazing about the printing process, and the thing I've worked at, the biggest hurdle for me to get over in all of my work, is that what I am creating in Photoshop looks the way I want it to look like on paper. And they are two different looks. I mean, there's, on the screen, you have the retina display, there's a luminescence, there's a beauty, but it's pretty flat. And when you see these prints in person, there's a lot of depth. And you really get to see the color interplay. And what I've just started working on today is taking video, really getting up close to the prints so that you can actually see all the different color values. I mean, this piece probably has 140 layers in it. It's layer upon layer upon layer. And interestingly enough, in the print, you see that depth. It's not like you're just looking at a flat thing. And then the thing I did for this show behind me, two of the perforation prints, in order to have people see the actual density and depth, I did not put glass in front of the prints because I wanted people to get right up close to them and not have anything refracting their view so they can actually see what's going on. And this is when, to me, the divide between digital art and actually painting and all these things, to me, becomes sort of irrelevant, because at the end of the day, it's about color and form. And the printing process really gives you a sense. I mean, here I am photographing paint, and yet you look at the print and it's paint.
Right. Right. And, I love the fact that you use the word interplay. And I think about that word across all three of these bodies of work that you're representing in this show. And I think it's important for us to talk about, the Brownstone and the exhibition itself, and how those three bodies of work sort of come together, because right now we're kind of like just touching on each of the three. But like, so when I start to think about interplay, let's just kind of focus on the perforations for a minute. I love how the dot pattern is seemingly, I know it's not, but it's seemingly like an overlay that we're supposed to peer through. But you spend a split second with it, and all of a sudden now what's underneath is on top. There's like this exchange that begins to take place. And then, of course, there's this notion of, I can see the graffiti tag in this piece, for example, and that line that cuts through and sort of connects the dots on some interesting level begins to create a third dimension between what's on top, what's behind, and what's in between.
Right. And so the idea, are they, you know, are the perforations peering through, or are they laying on top? And then the most important thing for me, unlike the earlier figurative pieces where I have paint upon, photographs upon photographs, sort of, I would say, a more riotous explosion of color, a more optimistic kind of work of art, in the sense that it's really celebrating things. Not to say that this work is the antithesis of that, but the thing that resonates most for me with the perforation pieces is, so I started the perforation series really when I got back into doing photography after not doing any work for the first year of COVID, because I was, you know, I think like a lot of people, depressed, scared, didn't really have any creative inspiration at all. And now I know a lot of artists who had really fecund periods. They did tons of work. Not the way it worked for me. But so when I went back to photographing stuff, I really got interested in fragments of things I was photographing. So let's say I photographed the side of a building and there was, like, you know, splatter of graffiti and, you know, old advertising posters and everything else. I would find these little areas where I just saw this interplay of, like, color wrestling with itself. In other words, these are, most of the pieces in here are assemblages you find out on the streets. Like, in other words, it could be garbage, it could be anything. And then it was like, okay, so I found this great little fragment, but it's not something like my figurative pieces where I'm going to cut it all up and, you know, and create like a model with, you know, floating in a sea of tags with her, you know, goat symbol across it. And then I started thinking about how much I enjoyed the color. And then I wanted to introduce a field of color into this fragment, and then start, as I like to say, juggling these 72 balls in the air and cutting them through and starting to see how the color field creates a new tension in the fragment of the photograph. And so what you start to see is, you see, okay, there's a field of purple on the lower left. There's the black tag going through the whole thing. If you saw this on the street, first of all, you'd never be able to identify the small section I took of it. But when I started, you know, putting the black color field on it, and then the tag going through it, and then all of a sudden, all the spheres start to have this different relationship with each other. And then as you twist the spheres, as you play with the color and the contrast and everything else, you get to this point, for me, or I get to this point where piece starts to vibrate, it starts to resonate. In other words, for me, even though it's a static piece on the wall, there is like a sort of kinetic kind of energy in them that is, I think, at the end of the day, what I'm always shooting for. And yeah.
Huh. Yeah. And I was going to say, there's like this, there's something that popped up in the comments that I want to grab onto and say before it gets too far away. And it does go back to, I'm going to pop it up on the screen because it's a little bit long, but I think and those of you who have said things or asked questions and I've skipped you, I will get back to them. I promise. Like 63's got one I want to save.
The year I was born, by the way, 63.
Ooh.
Nice. And, you know, before I jump on this comment really quickly, you know, when you're talking about these notions of how the color fields and the interaction with the perforation sort of exist, and how the color fields get altered by that, it sort of lends itself back to what we just said about how, in an attempt to cover up graffiti in the city, they begin to use these colored paints, and there's like this new kind of layered interaction with what's underneath. And it does have a similar thing going on. There's a quick question in here, though. Let me see if I can get it to pop up on the screen for us. There we go. I love the development variation of the concept from the earlier work fields to your current flowers. Are you a sci-fi fan? I get this feeling.
Oh, yeah, I'm a sci-fi fan. In fact, it does definitely like connote like 50s sci-fi, but then the other feeling of the early Fields work is it's also more Frankenstein, because there's a reanimation. There's the idea for me, moving through the urban landscape has always been like the things flashing by in my periphery. Like I'm going down the street, and being a big fan of graffiti, you meet this piece of graffiti in movement, other people are moving, trucks, cars are going by. And so this thing seems to have its own energy in the environment. And then you go see, a two-dimensional painting of graffiti in a gallery, and it's like, it's been taken out of its environment, and it's in a gallery, and it can be the most beautiful painting on earth, but it doesn't have the same feeling for me as when I encounter it on the street. And so then I was thinking, okay, I'm taking photos of graffiti, I'm taking all these landscapes, and I said, let me try to take these tags that I started with and introduce them into these fields of motion, these landscapes that I photographed. And the minute I did that, I felt the same energy from the tag that I had seen spray painted on a door, walking past it, now on a road, in a field, seemingly in motion. And so that solved this frustration I'd always had with the street view versus the gallery view versus the artistic representation of it in different environments.
Should I pop over to one of those really quickly just so we can kind of, this is one of the earlier ones, and I think the sci-fi reference is pretty good, but we were looking at this one earlier together, but this kind of goes to that, would you say?
Oh, it definitely goes to it. I mean, I love, these are all fields I take with my brother and a friend. We haven't done it since COVID. We go to England and watch 5 soccer matches, and the only sane way to get around England is on trains. You can get to London, from London to Manchester in an hour and 45 minutes, or you can drive for 7 hours. So while everybody else was passed out from their hangovers of, too much Guinness, I just take, hundreds of photographs of different landscapes. So that's where you get the motion in the landscape. And then getting back to Brooklyn, people, to protect their garbage cans, love to spray paint them with their street addresses on them. And so this guy used this beautiful, shade of blue Krylon and spray painted the most drippy, unrecognizable numbers you've ever seen on a garbage can. And so within that blue, alien are probably 7 different numbers, all cut into different pieces, keeping the drips and sort of becoming its tentacles, its legs as it moves across the landscape. And so that is, so this is the opposite of the flowers. The flowers are taking the rural bit and dumping it into a cityscape, and this is taking the urban bit and dumping it into a rural landscape.
So when you're taking the graffiti elements, are you manipulating that in any way, or is this the direct you're pulling?
Okay, you cut things together, you remove things. Okay, like this piece here, this one of my favorite signs I've ever seen. It was on Houston and LaGuardia. It was a no parking sign, and somebody had just crossed off the no and put yes parking. And I just thought, well, that's, hey, why not? And so and then it was then, and there's the shrouded, 95 highway, me driving to Maine. I have an 8-year-old daughter. We spend a lot of time at the Painted Pot. So there's a painted figurine. There's a Korean grocer in my neighborhood who somebody just splattered, blue paint over dripped graffiti. However, I don't think this was the city that did it. I think it was literally the Korean grocer just being sick of the tag. And so he did his own blue paint. And then, you're like, okay, I'll tell you the least fun part is cutting drips out.
But that's one of the most beautiful and authentic parts about it. Like, you need those drips to really place it where it belongs.
Well, it's like when Warhol started doing his, soup cans, right? And the famous, story is that he put drips in it, the first couple, and Sidney Janis or whoever his gallerist said, why are you because he's coming on the heels of all the abstract expressionists, right? And so Sidney Janis goes, well, why are you putting any drips in them at all? And Warhol's like, yeah, why am I? So it's just that, the drips, the drips to me are never ending.
Well, that, and I think they have a relationship back to the organic, which is this interesting juxtaposition that you have, because you have this ultimate, even though we don't like to think about it, but it's like a brutish civilization. Graffiti is civilization, right? It's urban, it's turf wars, it's trying to mark a territory. And then you have, in the other realm, you have these very rural landscapes in some of these, or in your flower series, that is the organic nature. When we look at the drips, it's like we're letting something do what it's supposed to do, which is this really delicious pull in some of these pieces, because it's just kind of adding more layers onto that relationship and that opposing controversy and how it's kind of working together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, the show's over. That was no, I love that. That's actually
but you need
Terri
the trips.
A great press release for my show, and as I said to Todd and Terri, I'm like, you can just basically, it was the most prescient thing I've ever read about my work, and I said, I don't need to answer any questions. You can just put up what you wrote, and you succinctly have, basically, you have me figured out to a T.
Thank
and
you.
That's pretty incredible. I'm still blown away by what you wrote.
Yeah.
So
thank you
very much.
Thank you. But back to the show.
Sure.
But these are great, and I love all the layers, especially when you're going to perforations and that series.
Well, I have a question for you. What do you see Terri? What do you see when you look at this foxglove flower floating over my deck in Brooklyn?
Well, the oversaturation is one of the first things that comes at you, and the direct centeredness, because it takes center stage, and then you've got the subdued, blurred background, which is a very noisy background. Typically, you're in the city and it's loud. That's typically what you associate with it. And flowers typically take the back row in, nature settings. So it's interesting that you're bringing this up. This seems to be like a territorial marking, just like your tags do in your rural settings when you reverse the order. There's something very spiritual about it too, because it takes center stage. It's like this figure. It becomes something other. I don't know.
This gets back to me into sort of the sci-fi, the question from before, and at the same time, they almost look like papal lieges, these, because it looks like two heads and adorned in these robes and everything. And so it is, it's nature as, omniscient and what would the word be? And, nature and man, the relationship that, twists and turns. At the end of the day, nature will always win out. And so these talismanic sort of floral pieces I don't know. They are heralding something. I'm not quite sure what it is.
And just the scale too, because there's a scale shift there that makes them a little bit more imposing.
And a sci-fi reference real quick, I think of Logan's Run, which kind of, I know it's a crazy reference, I know, and I don't even know if I'm going to be able to pull this one off, but there's this kind of like when he escapes the city and he's out trying to escape his fate. If I remember correctly, there was a lot of overgrowth over some of the older structures from the original civilization, and this kind of reminds me of that a little bit. That ivy-strewn Greek classical, structures. So, I mean, if I had to pull a direct sci-fi reference, maybe it's that one. But there's also a couple comments coming in where 63 says almost a Bacon sort of reference, like Francis Bacon.
Okay, I mean, I love Bacon's work. I think that's the great thing about.
He says the papal part is almost a Bacon sort of reference.
Yeah, and also the color. I mean, Bacon was pretty phenomenal with his purples and his pinks, and these really dark, beautiful brown and green backgrounds. I can see that.
So, and one other quick movie reference, real quick. Ben Hagenbush asked earlier when you mentioned Frankenstein, he wants to know if you're referencing Karloff's Frankenstein, like Boris Karloff.
Yeah, definitely Karloff's Frankenstein. Growing up in San Francisco, my mom was in the Socialist Workers Party, and they would have movie nights every Friday. And, they would either screen Dracula or Frankenstein or Modern Times or something. So, and I was probably 6 or 7 the first time I actually saw the projected movie of Frankenstein. The other film getting into Frankenstein that I really liked was Gods and Monsters, about the guy who made the movie and his experiences in World War I and how they formed the way he put Frankenstein together. I mean, constructed the movie, and I just thought that was, interesting.
Oh, I love that. I'm realizing as I'm looking at our slides and I'm popping back and forth and I look at this foxglove and then I jump here, there's some interesting similarities in terms of form and some color reference to some degree. Not super direct, but it feels like some of those fuchsias and some of those circular forms hovering over, like if you look at the periphery of this, things gray out a little bit, they diffuse a little bit, almost similarly to that other one. Now, I don't know if there's necessarily a reason to make that direct reference, but I keep thinking of the name of the show, like intersections and these lines that we can draw through these various bodies of work that you're making. And that kind of stands out to me. I'm trying to make these connections.
Well, the line that goes through it all is color. I mean, you're going to see in all my work really vibrant color. As I always joke, I'm like, Photoshop, give me more color, because I love saturation. I love reds and pinks. And then, I'll change pace. So this is like very bright. It's actually, that is a light in the center there, surrounded by some gels and whatnot. But then I'll go off and just do the most muted thing on earth. Or then lately I did a perforation that's almost all blue. And so the thing that is intriguing to me is that these relationships between these spheres and the color field, it just, people are always seeing different relationships in them, associative values. My favorite art form of all is dance. I love going to see, Mark Morris, Pina Bausch, whoever, because for the most part, it's just music and people moving. And I can sit there, unlike going to a jazz concert, which I love jazz, I like classical music, but it makes my brain work in a different way. Whereas dance, I just can sit there and, think about the movement, the color, the music underneath, and it just, sets things firing off in my brain. And so once again, it's about movement and color. And, the trickiest thing in doing this is that when you're dealing with you find this fragment of an image that you want to, put into this format, and then it's like, well, what color makes this thing work? How many slashes going through it give it more of a sense of movement? Sometimes I don't use slashes at all. Sometimes the pieces are more leaden than other times, but there's always a dialogue going on. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not tiring of the dialogue.
You know, it's one of those things, you mentioned dance and Pina Bausch, and I have no references to Pina Bausch in this slideshow whatsoever. And I do this thing sometimes where I run away with a reference that some people know, but not everybody knows. And then later I regret it. But I have to say really quickly, for those of you who don't know Pina Bausch's work, look up Pina Bausch's work after this show. It is some of the most beautiful dance choreography that you'll see. But what I think about, Tony, when you say that is there's this piece or a series of pieces she does with chairs on a stage where she's moving through these chairs on a stage. And I feel like I'm almost looking down on the varied and chaotic arrangements of those things. And it really resonates with me now that you made that reference. I feel like, oh my God, I can really see something completely in addition to what we've talked about already. So appreciate that. Let's see. I'm almost through. I want to just look at a couple more of these. Did you start to say something?
No, I didn't. Sorry. Do you
want to go back?
No, not yet.
Okay.
So I'm the word perforations is interesting to me. So I guess this is a strange question maybe, but when you think of the word perforations, what do you think of? And this is more just to kind of try to find an understanding. And this is more of something to do with myself for a second, but I just want to kind of know, like, when you're thinking of the word perforation, what are you thinking of?
When I'm thinking of, I guess when I think of perforation, I'm thinking of lightening something, making it less heavy.
Okay.
I'm thinking of making it transparent.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that is my, in the early, I sent you the photographs of, a coffee table I perforated, but it's that idea that as you move, past a physical perforated object, it once again, it sort of, you approach it from the side and it looks pretty, solid. And then as you move by it, it opens up and it closes and it opens up and it closes. Mm-hmm. And so that's what perforation means to me.
Okay. See, to me, and this is just because probably of the medical background, the word perforation is something you typically don't want because it's like a violent thing usually, like God forbid a colon perforates or something medical. But in this sense, right, perforation, I see what you're saying with the holes, but for me it's always meant something a little bit more violent, and I actually had to go back and look up the word, and I'm like, is it me? And it is me. It is holes and making something a little bit lighter. But thinking of that in terms of the urban and the noise, and it kind of coincided really nicely, but this is such an organized industrial perforation to me. Like, it's very methodical and meticulous. It's not something that just happened organically where something burst forward and ripped and tore and stuff. And that was something else that was going through my head when I was looking at your artwork, and I was just curious, like, what you thought of when you heard the word perforation.
See, as a sculptor and somebody who is, heavily invested in making, to me, a perforation is, could be a neat line of holes intended to either weaken something or to lighten something. Tony, I'm dying to show that picture you sent of your first perforation ever. Can we throw that up there, and how it kind of like you looked back and saw this, because I feel like when I saw this picture, I was like, oh yeah.
It's gorgeous. It's so beautiful.
This answers Joseph Barbacia's question earlier, if any of your perforations are truly three-dimensional.
That's about as three-dimensional as it gets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then show the close up, because then you really get to see the swirl, which is pretty. Yeah.
Yeah, that swirl.
Walk by as I was saying before. First of all, I got a beautiful piece of mahogany. I used to make lights and furniture. I also, did sculpture and painting. So I've always been, working at something. And I remember like just wanting to get this like beautiful hunk of mahogany and then just transform it by basically, teetering on the edge of doing enough space between the perforations so that the whole thing didn't fall apart, because it will all crack. And but as you walk by this coffee table and as you hover over it, it's constantly changing. The light value's changing and everything. So, and the other thing, getting back to my lovely mother who's watching tonight. Thanks, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
She is a brilliant painter, brilliant artist. So I grew up, just surrounded by lovely, art. And she has not always, but has worked with round canvases. So they're just these gorgeous, like, circular pieces of artwork in, where I grew up. And so I guess somehow that's, a direction that I feel comfortable with, or a shape or a form I feel comfortable with.
I like that. And I also like the literal optical sort of endeavor that's created here. So, you can see that sort of bulbous point in the middle that's completely optical. It's not really there. And it comes from the accumulation of the varied perspectives as we look through the holes. And then, as I look at that, and then I come back to one of the perforation pieces, I actually really like the challenge that's presented here now, and the sort of limitation of not having the physical depth, but having an implied interplay, to use your word, between the way in which some of the colors sit up on top of, say, that more subdued ochre, and the way some of them fall through. It does the job the table does, but in a much more, or much less simplistic way.
Yeah, I mean, the orange in the upper right really does just sort of blend into the ochre. The yellow on the lower right is, maybe a neutral trade-off. And then you get over to the, the reds. And then, as I like to say, in the upper left, I think we said this when we spoke before. So the other strange thing in the perforations is within a sphere, and I keep saying this, and, maybe I'm the only one who thinks it, but in those sort of light blue, perforations up top, I mean, they just remind me of Richard Diebenkorn paintings. So, you take these little, you start, redacting the photograph, and you just create these new little entities that really have, they do have something to do with the original picture plane, but then they have nothing to do with it. And getting back to your point, Terry, about, is it, does one get annoyed or a little bit frustrated about wanting to know what's underneath? And to me, the whole point is the interplay of abstraction. It's the color, it's the form, whatever is in fact, what's underneath this one is a little piece of Spray Boy 2. I mean, that I've started perforating some of my earlier figurative work because I find little bits of it and I'm like, that is my favorite part of that piece. And then I'm like, let me play with that. And that's actually a really good feeling when you start, taking your work and creating new work out of it.
Yeah, I like that. And as a matter of fact, we should probably go over to some of the figurative work as we get towards the end of the hour here. And I would love to make some, find the intersections between these bodies of work. But let's talk about these a little bit before we run out of time.
This is Spray Boy 2. There's a great building, an old four-story paint store building at the end of Essex Street, right before it runs into East Canal. It's an old Sherwin-Williams building. And I've walked by it 100 times, photographed it over and over again. And I've always wanted to use elements of that in it. So you'll see that there's lettering that basically spells paints, you know, sort of smattered in there. There's the anti-graffiti tan paint over. There are my no parking orange drips, which you see in a lot of my pieces. I'm obsessed with that color, that hue of orange. And then little fragments from signage on that building. And then the background is this insane car wash mural in Queens that is completely disintegrating. And I kept driving by and I'm like, this is like one of the most incredible pieces of art I've ever seen, because I love decollage. I like it when, you know, advertising posters replace other ones and it just all starts to peel off.
I love that. Yeah.
Like, you know, why, you know, just cut it out and put it in a frame and put it up on a wall. It's perfect. So it was nice to be able to use these things I was passing so long. And then, of course, it gets back to the idea of, okay, so, you know, the foam insulation guy, you know, going off to, you know, spray foam into somebody's walls for insulation. But that idea of, you know, the air-powered hose, the spray can, the everything else. And so it's sort of like, okay, or is he like the anti-graffiti guy cleaning up for the city and covering stuff up? What is he? Or is he the graffiti artist? And so I've just been obsessed with those box trucks going, you know, by with these, like these space aliens in Tyvek suits. And if you zoom in on that stuff, you'll see that there are rivets going through the guy's body because all those trucks are riveted together.
Oh yeah,
so
I see it.
Just little elements like that, you know, to me are things that, you know, I just absolutely love.
It's funny too. As I'm looking at it more closely, and my mother says, "Love the little Dutch boy reference that you left on the anti-graffiti warrior."
He's up on the building, and so is that Aries. Somebody tagged the can of paint there. That's still up on the building. I'm sure, you know, it's probably got a couple of years left before it becomes a new marvelous condominium or something. But it was nice to sort of memorialize it. There are just certain, you know, things that you pass every day that, you know, New Yorkers. As Fran Lebowitz said, I am the New Yorker. I became a New Yorker the first year I lived here, and I'll always be that kind of New Yorker. Like I have, you know, my history, my memories of what New York City should be. It's always when you first come to New York City. And so part of it is, right, wanting to pay homage to these structures, these images that have meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I like that actually.
I do too.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb because sometimes I kind of like launch my commentary off into some really abstract, weird.
You?
Yeah, and I make a long reach. But you know, you've referenced your love of dance, and I'm trying to think about these three bodies of work that are at the Brownstone and connect them in different ways. Now, there's a question we often ask of artists, you know, like, it's like, oh, what do you listen to when you're in the studio? Because we're curious about, you know, sometimes we're curious about people's musical tastes. But I'm seeing three very different sort of elements of musicality also in these. The perforations piece is being very rhythmic and structured, whereas the figurative pieces are very sort of loose, expressionistic, and abstract. And somewhere in the middle of those two is this more singular, iconic, almost like a solo part where the flowers exist. So really nice, you know, sort of play on both dance and music as well.
Yeah, I listen to everything. I mean, my first experiences in New York were Public Enemy, KRS-One, you know, Adventist pop. And then, you know, coming out of San Francisco, it was all Dead Kennedys and Black Flag. And then, you know, and then grew up in a household where jazz was playing all the time, Coltrane and Davis and Thelonious Monk. Yeah, and depending on what I'm working on, I'm listening to different, you know, styles of music. But the most important thing, and then of course going through, you know, an insane Prodigy period of just listening to Prodigy over and over again to the point you might need to be institutionalized.
Wow.
It's yeah, you know, music's always on in my household. It was on in my household growing up, and it's on in my household now. because I can't imagine being in an interior environment without just a little background music.
Yeah, totally. And actually, one of our viewers, Memory Vessel, says it's time to write the rock opera. Tony, this has been awesome. We've really enjoyed talking about your work, and I feel like, you know, this tonight's little visit and then this discussion has really opened up a lot about this show to me, for sure. Terri probably had it all along, but I needed a little more time.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on. I really, enjoy the work that you guys do, and yeah, it's been a blast.
Well, we appreciate that. And you know what? If you guys haven't had a chance to yet, you have to get out to the Brownstone Art to see this show. They're at 129 Park Place in Brooklyn, New York. You do have to make an appointment to see the show.
Yep.
But we really encourage you to get to see that show before June 12th.
Right.
And the closing reception is on June 12th.
On June 12th. Now, they are going to have an online exhibition coming tomorrow.
Right.
But nothing beats seeing it in person. So
Yeah.
I'll be here. So yeah, I'd love to meet you.
So you'd get to meet Tony, which is awesome. So, all right, Tony, listen, thank you so much. We don't want to take up any more of your time because you've been so generous. But if you want to hang out in the green room, we'll catch up with you in a few minutes. And
okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was really cool.
That cool?
That was so great.
I love how they're all related, even though all the subject material varies. There's the palette relationship, there's this connection with graffiti, but also this connection with nature. So it's this intersection of all those things.
Well, this was the thing, is typically, or at least in the past, we've had the Brownstone people like David or Josh or Taylor on the show.
Sure.
And Josh might talk about some of his thoughts behind curating. And, this one, and ones in the past, we've kind of like felt our way through it. But now, the clarity of the decision making, to me, and Josh is probably sitting there watching the show going, you don't have a clue.
You don't have any idea.
But I really feel like there's a real connection. You see three seemingly disparate bodies of work, and then all of a sudden you start to put it together. It's so rewarding, actually.
Gorgeous stuff. Yep.
So, who do we have next week?
Next week,
we have Sandra Chamberlain.
So
we have a sculptor on next week named Sandra Chamberlain, who we're really excited to talk to. So definitely join us for that. We have Matthew Collings the week after that. Good lineup coming, people.
Yeah.
So definitely follow us and keep abreast of all we do.
That's right.
So here's to all of our friends out there.
Yes.
This was great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Wait, what's going on in the chat? Let's see.
Ooh.
Ben says, thank you, Tony. Memory Vessel says, thanks for speaking about your work and process. Let's see.
Great show tonight.
Definitely Student Work says, really enjoy this and your work, Tony. Thank you. That's awesome. Great show tonight from Mom.
M Galleries, thank you very much.
M
Great
Galleries,
show.
Frank, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Great show, TNT. Thank you so much. That's from David Backus. Joseph Barbaccia, TNT, Dynamite.
That's right.
And John Park, great show. Thank you. See you next week. Awesome. Sherry Biddle, great. Sherry, I'm sorry I missed that one awesome comment you put in there. Actually, I meant to read that. So, my bad. I apologize for that. Anyway, from us to all of you, thanks again for watching. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.